Hello. The worlds of entertainment and blockchain have been moving towards each other for a while. Well, today we're talking about a business that aims to complete that union, combining streaming services with NFTs. It had to be called NFTV, and it is. It comes from the US entertainment and technology business Rad. And I'd like to welcome Rad's CEO, Tony Mugavero. Hi, Tony.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for doing this.
You're listening to CoinGeek Conversations with Charles Miller.
Well, let's start by telling people what Rad consists of so far. I've downloaded it and signed up, and there's a wealth of streaming content there already. But perhaps you could just tell us, in addition to that, about the NFT side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We started out as a virtual reality streaming company, and so we're streaming 360-degree video, 3D, spatial audio, 180 degrees, partnered with all the VR headsets, and so started our roots there, and then ultimately, as VR continued to take its time, we looked to expand into supporting traditional content. Traditional video is very easy to support in contrast to 360-degree video. So,
right.
But ultimately we still needed a differentiator. We couldn't just be a streaming platform with the likes of Netflix and Hulu existing. So we had to think about innovative ways to differentiate ourselves. And so around, end of 2017, early 2018, we started working on incorporating smart contracts for content and handling royalty splits and payments. And we did that kind of end of 2017, early 2018. But even then, the world wasn't ready for it yet.
With your ideas about royalty splits and all that, were you approaching the big entertainment companies that you were partnering with and offering them that as a service, or how did that work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with virtual reality, we pretty quickly got the largest studios and broadcasters on the platform. I mean, the likes of Disney and Fox, NBC, Viacom, etc.
It's an incredibly impressive list, and also the similar kind of list of your investors with some very big names in it, as I noticed as well.
Yeah, a number of them are investors in the company. We have A&E and Sony and Warner Music Group and Tornante and Disney, small investor. So yeah, we had an interesting start in the immersive space, and that established us as trusted with the content companies all the way up to the top, and trusted with the hardware makers to innovate on their devices and do really forward-thinking things. And so, but no amount of money is going to make us, a little startup, change the VR landscape and accelerate adoption. There were companies who spent $1 billion, and it still is taking its time. So we had to think, how can we take these great relationships and partnerships that we built and turn that into something that has a lot of potential to disrupt content and the intersection of media and technology. So that was kind of that time frame of 2017, 2018. We started to look at not only supporting traditional video, but leveraging blockchain to package up content. And so as we started to bring that to our partners, our existing partners, every single one of them would take a meeting with us and have a conversation, but they weren't ready for it at all.
What were you asking them to sign up for?
Yeah, I mean, they were essentially interested in the idea that you could, if somebody paid you for a piece of content, you would get paid immediately, and then the revenue shares would happen immediately, and all of the accounting was essentially auditable. There were also some other things that we built into the platform that were a key component of it, which was to tie in a peer-to-peer content delivery layer, so that the large pieces of content that we were moving around could be in a hybrid system where you have peer-to-peer content delivery and a kind of centralized, highly available, high performance system for video delivery. It's one thing to deliver JPEGs. It's another thing to deliver a 4K 360-degree 3D video. That's 30 megabits a second. That's a huge amount of data. So when we started to look at leveraging that combination of things, we just had this light bulb moment of saying, okay, well, actually you could have fans of shows or movies or whatever it is. If they purchase something, they could download it, put it on their computer, or their untapped resources that they have at their house, and then distribute that to other people who are purchasing the movie or the TV show.
A real peer-to-peer network then.
Yeah. And then that would allow whoever the next people are who are buying Spider-Man or Star Wars or whatever, the part of the sales from the content itself would go to pay out the peers in the network.
I would have thought the big entertainment companies would not like the sound of that, because it would remind them of Napster and those problems.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where we thought that, adding the smart contract layer would create a proof that somebody had ownership over something. And that's something that never existed in the good old BitTorrent and LimeWire days. It was just kind of share whatever to wherever, and people were, they didn't have ownership over anything and they couldn't prove it, and they were just sharing it. So it removed all the trust from the system. And simultaneously, there was no reward for continuing to be a peer. So what would happen is people would just steal a movie and then put it on their hard drive and turn off their torrent, and that would be. And so in this new scenario, we were saying somebody had to prove that they owned it. They could then be a host of it, and then as new people came in to purchase it and there was proof of the purchase, then the people hosting the legitimate copies of the content would be rewarded for doing that.
Would the original person hosting it be the creator or the owner of the piece of content themselves?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So they would publish it into we built a file manager that you could publish content into. So the original publisher would publish the content, and an entry would go into the blockchain, and then they would become the first peer in the network. And then they could go post that link out to the world, and anybody could grab that link, purchase the content, and download it.
Are you working up to what your current plan is, or is this your current plan, or was this a way station towards where you are now?
Our instincts in that moment were right. The world was not ready for it in 2017, 2018. There were a number of different organizations playing around with ideas that they could get content on the blockchain, but nobody was taking it seriously. I mean, you had CryptoKitties and CryptoPunks and a few kind of meme moments that there was no standard around. When we started writing our contracts, ERC 721 hadn't even been established really. People were playing around with the ideas, but and certainly like 1155s on Ethereum, like none of that existed. So we were just early all around, and none of the content companies were taking it seriously, and users in the crypto space were excited about the potential, but there's not enough users, and then the whole market crashed, and so it was a weird time. So we had to be a little bit patient to wait until the world caught up. And in that time, we went and did a bunch of content deals with Complex Magazine and Whistle Sports, and just like a bunch of these kind of smaller studios or like super indie content producers and owners.
Those are what we can see on Rad today, right?
That's right. So as we built out the traditional content library, that's not enough to go build a breakout organization. And as we saw the end of 2020, early 2021, as really Top Shot, I see that as a big catalyst in bringing that awareness to a much broader audience and getting a lot of people excited about the potential.
Just before we move on though, just so if people haven't looked at Rad, I mean, basically so far, if you go on Rad, there's a bunch of free content, and then you can subscribe for premium content in traditional ways using PayPal or a credit card and so on.
That's right. Yeah. And then there's a section for NFTs. So
So let's talk about the NFTs.
Yeah. So what we saw with the movement into, what people were getting excited about around Top Shot, and then of course, like, OpenSea started to explode, but we had already kind of started developing or redeveloping the tech that we built previously into kind of all the modern conveniences that we have today in blockchain. And so we started that work and really put the first auctions out kind of middle end of last year. And they were auctions of like one-of-one pieces of collectible content for like a movie that's a collectible classic, but then it has a one-of-one lithograph of the movie poster. And that the physical print was shipped to the buyer, and then the film itself was like a 4K Blu-ray level piece of content that we packaged up as an NFT. So if you, the owner or the buyer, purchased that NFT, you get the video that's wrapped up in the NFT. That's like the full Blu-ray level masters, and then you get the custom lithograph sent to you. That's where we initially introduced the ability to mint a large video, and then we have a hybrid system, so you can log in with your username and password, and that username and password is tied to a centralized database. So we can use the blockchain to prove that you have ownership over something, mark that record in our database that you should be able to watch it. And then when you go log into our PlayStation app or our Android TV app or whatever it is, you have access to that content and nobody else does. So we can leverage the blockchain as an entitlement system. And of course, it comes with all the additional layers of immediate payouts to people, royalties on the resales, et cetera.
Those resales and royalties and things, if they are an existing movie that we're talking about, have you sort of embedded all that within the contract that you have for the license of the movie? Or how does that work?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like if you bought a DVD at the store and you watched it for 2 years, and then you said, I don't watch this movie anymore. I'm going to go to Movie Trading Company and sell it for $2 or whatever to whoever wants to watch it next. In that scenario, the original publisher, the original content owner, gets paid again if you do it on blockchain. And whereas if you sell the physical DVD at the store, then they don't get anything.
So is there a blockchain aspect to that more traditional side of things or not?
Yeah. I mean, we feel like every single part of the content and commerce layer on the internet will be on the blockchain. So if you're tracking who has purchased something and who owns something, and you have a verifiable record of that you can check at any time, then that's super powerful for a content company and for consumers. They can prove not only to themselves, but to even multiple services that they've already purchased that content.
I think at the moment, you have to register a MetaMask wallet, and the payment goes through that. Is that right?
Yeah. So on the NFT side, we track everything with crypto payments. And then what we do is if you sign up for an actual account that gives access to all the applications, then when you purchase something with crypto, it obviously puts that entry in the blockchain. It's recognized in your wallet. And then if you connect your wallet and you're logged in, then we can prove that you have access to those assets. And that allows you to get access to those assets on multiple devices, which, like Google TVs, they don't have the ability to connect wallets and watch movies with, on the blockchain. The same thing with like the Sony PlayStation. We kind of like move around that limitation by pairing that with a database that people can use to log into.
One aspect of this, though, is how do you know that I don't just give my login details to my friend, just as I might, which is a problem for the streaming services, just in the conventional way with names and passwords?
Yeah. I mean, that's like a slippery slope a little bit into, people log into websites and use the websites mostly for how they should be used. And then the next category of people is like, I'm going to log into this website and watch this content using my parents' login. And, that's like a gray area, but people
But the
obviously use
blockchain
it.
is not a technology that solves that problem, though, particularly, is it?
Yeah, no. So basically, that's why we have a hybrid system of you are logging in with a username and password, and if you have ownership in that, you can prove that you have ownership of a piece of content in your wallet, then we can mark that record in the database temporarily as you have ownership of this piece of content. And then if you log in on a TV or whatever it is and try to watch that content, you can watch it. So it's an interim step, I feel like, where we're not custodying people's wallets right now. We're letting other people custody their wallets. And in the future, we definitely see an opportunity to custody people's wallets on our side, much like Coinbase custodies people's wallets. So we'll get there, but it's, one step at a time.
Let's move on to really the present day, because it was announced very recently that Air Ventures is investing in Rad, and that you are interested in the potential of Bitcoin SV as well, in various ways. But perhaps you could just tell me a bit about what you see as the opportunities with Bitcoin SV.
Yeah. I mean, I think the blockchain space is funny because everybody looks at different chains and it's like it ends up having like this tribal mentality attached to it, and like people pick one over the other for various different reasons. And I think honestly our opportunity is to combine many chains in a similar fashion that a crypto exchange does. You're moving things from one chain to another chain and providing the convenience layer. And so as we look at the different solutions, and as you look at what's been happening on Ethereum, there's been an explosion of other chains and opportunities on other chains because Ethereum has gotten incredibly expensive, and it's reasonably fast in terms of the network, but not that fast. So as we are looking at approaching consumers, the broader mass market doesn't care about the blockchain, just like they don't care about if you're using Postgres database or MongoDB, or like they solve different problems, and the consumer doesn't care. They don't need to care. All they want is, does this improve my life? Yeah. And if you start to add things like, well, in order to purchase this piece of content, it's going to cost you $100 in gas fees. That is immediately, I mean, that's more than somebody's like streaming budget for 6 months. So
yeah.
And the consumer in their mind, they're like not even going to think about that.
So it's the low transaction fees is one of the good things about Bitcoin SV.
Yeah. I mean, the ability to get low cost, high throughput, I mean, that's really the ultimate goal. And the same thing with like microtransactions, even if you wanted to develop a streaming model and track all the accounting around that, it just becomes a lot harder on Ethereum. And I think if you look at what's happening generally across the whole ecosystem, is that there's been a lot of development around how can we make blockchains faster and cheaper. And so, ultimately, like BSV clearly fits into that category. And, there's a community that's really excited about it and its potential and building on top of it. And so, what we see as the opportunity as a content company is there's going to be a lot of content on BSV and other chains. And so like, if we can help that community facilitate, build the tools, and then at the same time, like give consumers something that is palatable for them from a cost perspective and a performance perspective. If they click buy on a movie, they want it to be spot and they want to hit play and they want it to play.
I saw you quoted as saying that you saw BSV as an aggregator of all cross-chain data. And so sort of bringing what is sitting on other chains into some kind of unified system. That's part of the plan as well then?
It depends on the amount of data, I guess, and how much people are storing in terms of, the chain itself. That's certainly one thing that we see as an opportunity, where if we have a bunch of different transactions that are happening on a bunch of different chains and you need a single record that's auditable, that somebody could just say, show me all the different things that are happening in this ecosystem, then you don't want to go query every different blockchain and try to cobble that data together yourself. So if simultaneously you can have a bunch of different buying and selling and minting and trading that's happening, but then have kind of a master ledger that tracks all of that information and allows people to see, because then it's just a metadata thing. You don't necessarily have to make if somebody mints an NFT on one chain, you don't have to make a copy of it and put it there. You just make a record of that it happened, and here's where it lives. Here's where the actual thing lives. We could do that with just a database, but again, that's like it kind of goes counter to what the blockchain space is about, which is a centralized company owning all the data and abusing it.
Well, you're also talking about the possibility of on-chain storage of large files, including full-length movies. I mean, that would be. I mean, that's not available today, I don't think, really, is it? That's you're looking some way ahead for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it gets challenging. You obviously, you can see some people are storing really simple JPEGs on chain, and there was a time when a disk drive or a SSD that's in our phone now is as big as a truck. So in our minds, we're like, that's ridiculous, but probably not in the future.
Right. Well, it would make things a lot simpler, wouldn't it? Because then you just have one system and you wouldn't be sort of having to link out of it to something that may not be there anymore.
Yeah, and there's of course the challenges that come with that. I mean, if you store like a Blu-ray, I mentioned before, like a Blu-ray level piece of content and ball of data could be 50 gigabytes. And that's just one movie or one, and so if you have tens of thousands or millions, hundreds of millions of movies, that just like from a blockchain perspective and storing that on a bunch of different computers for people, you'd need it'd only be a data center play is really like the only way to make that happen. It'd be like petabytes or more of data. There's also, you get into the issues of, if everything's on the chain and it's publicly visible, including the content itself, then of course anybody can just grab it. So then you start to get into like needing some kind of DRM or verifiable kind of mechanism that says this person actually owns this. If you are trying to consume this content and you don't own this, you can see that it's there and that it exists and that somebody owns it, but you can't consume it. And that's where if you're dealing with movie studios and content owners, that's where they start to get a little nervous.
Yeah,
and
I was going to say, I mean, there's some of this sort of some of these ideas I would imagine don't play particularly well, because what's in it for the big studios who already have control over their business, and they really don't, they're not interested in it being distributed in that way, probably, are they? I mean, are you looking to sort of disrupt the entertainment business by providing better ways for individual, more independent content producers, or are the big entertainment brands going to be your best customers, do you think?
I think generally what's happening is that they're like the bigger entertainment companies and tech companies that are abusing their position have kind of started to force these new paradigms on themselves. And these are all responses to systems being abused, whether that's, cryptocurrencies and the financial institutions abusing the financial system, or it's content companies who are abusing your data, or reselling that to advertisers, or renting your content to you and never letting you own it. Those are all everything that we're seeing today in blockchain and content. People going to Substack and Patreon, and those are all responses to, I'm a creator, I should be making more money. I'm a consumer, I should have a more direct connection with the person that I'm buying from. And so, those are the paradigms that have emerged are really kind of a response. And so it's not necessarily like going in and intentionally saying, we're going to take out the traditional media business. It's really kind of naturally being driven from the creators and the consumers, of saying, like, we're tired of our data being abused, and we're tired of not owning anything. And then the creators saying, well, I'm tired of waiting 6 months to get my sliver of a royalty check from Spotify. So these are all, it's just their responses to the industry. And so I think it's a generational shift. It's not like one company comes out and completely destroys the whole entertainment business. It's that, how do we listen to creators and consumers and say, what are they doing? Like, what are they trying to do? What do they want? And build something for that. And if that ends up going counter to the studios and what they're trying to achieve, they'll just need to listen to their consumers and their fans. And if they don't, then they'll die.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, but I mean, we should probably stop in a minute, but I'd like to just look at it from the consumer end. In the future, if I'm logging into NFTV in 5 years or 10 years time, what will my experience be like, and what will I be offered that is different from I mean, obviously it'll be different stuff going on behind the scenes, but what will the user experience be like, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the immediate opportunity in this space, and really what we're building for, is kind of like the middle 80% of the content ecosystem, and providing tools for those creators. Those are the types of creators that have control over their content. They have, creative control and ownership primarily. And that could be, we're not trying to mint TikTok dances or vacation videos. It's not user generated content necessarily. It could be, or the tools could be used for that. But the ideal situation is somebody who cares enough about this to make it a business. So that's kind of like the lower bound, right?
You've already got quite a nice selection of short films on Rad, which look like they're sort of made as a labor of love, but in a professional way. Yeah,
exactly. So there's small kind of 2-3 person groups, that studios of creators who are creating things that get millions of views, and they come from all kinds of backgrounds in animation and traditional video creation, etc. So that's kind of how we see the lower end of the spectrum is still professional. It's kind of like Spotify, I guess, in that regard, and that, like, not just anybody in their bedroom can upload things to Spotify. You have to, like, be professional and be on a label, etc. But then the other end of the spectrum, we know that chasing down IP like Star Wars and Marvel and etc., like, that's just going to be impossible. They'll play around with trading cards and like collectibles for their movies, like Space Jam and things like that, but that's not authentic to how the Web3 ecosystem is evolving around content, where if somebody launches an NFT project that has 10,000 pieces in it, those 10,000 pieces can all be the characters from the forthcoming show. And then the ownership of that character, the person who purchases the NFT then can own that character. And that opens up all kinds of potential for them to get access to private discords, use that NFT to get access to content before anybody else, or exclusively only to the NFT holders. You can do things like giving them access to live streams or live events if they own that NFT. So it creates this community and the ecosystem of the people that bought into the NFTs. There's character development, audience development, funding for the show, access to things that from the creators of the show. All that comes built into somebody launching an NFT project that ultimately turns into a cartoon or a series or a movie or whatever it is. So we're looking at it as a streaming platform, as a video platform. You have to have these authentic connections where the people can own the IP and ownership, and even potentially receive royalties from the commerce around the resulting pieces of content. So if somebody launches a 10,000 piece NFT collection that funds a show, and then people are buying that show, the NFT holders should benefit from that.
I'm slightly skeptical that if in 10 years' time NFTs are as successful as you think they're going to be, I don't think they're going to be called NFTs because it's just too sort of techie, and
right.
There'll be a more immediate way of describing what the benefit of an NFT is, because do you know what I mean? It just seems like it's still in the world of technology and not in the world of entertainment and consumerism somehow.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. And if you look at, if you look at your web browser right now and you look in the bar, in the URL bar, it still says HTTP://.
Yes,
that's
but we don't have to talk about that, do we?
We don't have to talk about it. No, but it's still there, and it's just kind of fallen into the background of like this technology that really backbones all of our communication. We don't even think about that at all anymore, and so it's I agree with you. I think NFT is like a silly name for the mass market, and it's now it's become like almost a divisive term. Some people are super excited about it. Some people are like, oh, NFTs, that's like,
It does go to the heart of the debate, I think, because if you were to say, let's not call them NFTs, let's call them online collectibles, for instance, that immediately sort of limits it and makes it seem like a rather specialist and perhaps not a rather a niche market. Somehow, I think your vision would want to be bigger than just people who want to collect things because they're such big fans of a particular piece of content or IP.
Yeah. I mean, our approach to the space and how we're educating people who haven't really taken the time to understand what NFTs and the blockchain enable. It's fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens that are in combination really where the power lies. And so it's incentive networks for people to participate, it's ownership of content, and then the community that's tied to that ownership. So the potential for community-based royalties and inclusion in the conversation for those people to get into private chats or, in real life events. If you want to go to a private party and you own an NFT, you can get into that event. So that is a community building exercise that's all tied to that one single thing that you bought on the blockchain. Again, it's just like win after win after win, instead of it being distilled down into this simple like, oh, these are just like web-based collectibles.
Right.
It's way bigger.
Right, exactly. Well, Tony, it's a fantastic vision, and thank you so much for spending time to explain that. I'm sure a lot of people watching this will be really excited that Bitcoin SV is going to be part of the plan, and perhaps even in a very important part of the plan as time goes on. And I hope we can keep in touch and monitor your progress with all this, because it sounds amazing. But thank you very much for the conversation today anyway.
Yeah, my pleasure. We're super excited about working with and partnering with Air Ventures, and BSV opens up a new world of possibilities. So, we're super excited about it. And, thank you again for the time today. It was great to chat about it.
Thank you very much, Tony.
All right. Thanks, Charles.
Thanks very much to Tony Mugavero from Rad. For the next couple of weeks, my colleague Claire Seldren will be hosting the show. As a warm-up to the BSV Global Blockchain Convention in Dubai from the 24th to the 26th of May, Claire will be selecting some highlights from previous conferences to show you what you'll be missing if, for some strange reason, you fail to make time for what will be 3 amazing days of presentations, discussions and announcements in Dubai. I'll be back in a couple of weeks, but until then, thanks for listening and goodbye. Or Dubai. Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin wallet, blockchain, stablecoins, MetaNet, the evolution of money. Everybody is talking about Bitcoin today, but what exactly is it? Learn the basics from experts. Learn what Bitcoin is, how it works, and why it matters. Bitcoin 101, your ultimate guide to the fundamentals of blockchain.